Started recording now.
Okay. Does it not tell me that on Teams? Okay, I'll trust you that it. Oh, there it is. Recording is started. Okay. By agreeing to this, I've consented to giving away my soul. All right, excellent. Here we go. Get my gavel out, make it official. And good morning. I'm going to go ahead and call this session of the City of Issaquah Hearing Examiner to order. For the record, today is January 6th, 2023, shortly after 10 a.m. And we have one item on the agenda this morning, and this is the Parkland Heights Preliminary Plat Proposal, number PP 22000001. It has other numbers associated with it, but that's the one I'm going to focus on. And this involves a request for preliminary plat approval to subdivide approximately 5.34 acres into 23 single-family residential lots with associated infrastructure and improvements on existing property that has a home and a couple outbuildings, but generally speaking, underdeveloped, as it were, at 4929 Issaquah Pine Lake Road, Southeast. My name is Andrew Reeves. I am a hearing examiner with Bucket Legal Consulting, and the city has selected me to hold certain land use hearings like this one. And today it will be my role to collect evidence in the form of exhibits and testimony to determine whether this proposal is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, critical areas ordinances, as well as the specific requirements for approval of a preliminary plat under the municipal code. And because this does involve the subdivision of land, also ensure that it complies with our state subdivision act, which is in chapter 5817 of the revised code of Washington. To that end, I received several exhibits in advance of the hearing that I had an opportunity to review. And I think the number that was landed on was somewhere around 30. But essentially, these include communications between the applicant and staff, the application materials themselves, information on sort of property ownership, information on the determination of non-significance, or DNS, that was issued by the city in relation to this proposal under our state's State Environmental Policy Act, or SEPA. Apologies. The plans themselves and iterations of said plans, landscape plans, lighting plan. In fact, I think I finally saw a photometric, full photometric plan for the first time in a decade, so that was great. A project narrative that sort of addresses how the applicant believes the project has met the various approval criteria. And then significant information of a technical nature about critical areas or lack thereof on site, including third-party review that was provided in relation to critical areas reports. And so we have information about that, as well as same if we count steep slopes in that category. So we have multiple reports related to potential critical areas, steep slopes, etc. Information about traffic as well that was provided. And then sort of technical details, and then finally information on notice that was provided in relation to the application, as well as today's hearing. And then there was a comment letters from, at least I know one, from the neighboring homeowners association. I printed them out, there over there. So just a few comments that were received, not a significant number of comments, but the number is not what is important, it's the substance. So we can talk about the comments that were received, and then presentation that was prepared by staff. And then I think ultimately the staff report, I received a staff report, and then sorry, I'm getting weird feedback. Is anyone else? Or is it just
if anyone that is not speaking can keep themselves muted, that would be appreciated.
Okay, I was gonna say, normally I was about to get to the keep yourself muted point in my chat, but what I was gonna say was I don't believe the staff report has an exhibit number or the revised staff report. We'll deal with that in a sec. But the number's around 30, 31 or so. We'll lock that down momentarily. Point being, I will deem these exhibits admitted into the record. Should anyone have additional exhibits they would like admitted into the record, let me know when it's your opportunity to testify. and I'll address admitting additional exhibits at that time. All testimony today will be under oath or affirmation. That's because were my decision ultimately to be appealed under our state's Land Use Petition Act or LUPA, the recording of the hearing today, as well as my decision and the admitted exhibits, would serve as the foundation for any such appeal. And to that end, I sometimes ask questions of those that are testifying, in fact, often do. Not trying to trip anyone up. I'm just annoying, but also I just want to ensure I have a thorough understanding of the proposal so that within a few weeks of the record closing, I'm able to produce a decision that is hopefully clear and legally defensible. And then finally, procedurally, the order that we typically follow here in the city of Issaquah, I believe we're going to follow today, is first I will swear in our planner, Emily Adams, who will give sort of an overview of the review process that led us to today's hearing. And then after hearing from our planner and any other folks on staff that she decides perhaps we might want to hear from up front, we'll then turn to the applicant representative or applicant team, and we certainly have some folks that have joined us today. I don't know if John Beam or Tom Abbott's leading the charge. If one of you can just raise your hand on who I should turn to first.
Yep.
Okay. John Beam on the
yes.
street as the ringleader of the applicant team, but my intent will be we'll go with staff and then the applicant team, and I'll have Mr. Beam direct traffic, as it were. That said, if there are members of the public interested in testifying, I will suggest, Mr. Beam, we'll try to get a sense of that when we turn to the applicant, to the extent that while I often have very detailed questions or would like to hear about, very specific stormwater issues or whatnot, rather than hear from every expert that the team may have brought, I sometimes encourage sort of a quick overview from the rep and then allowing the public to speak their piece, as it were, members of the public, in case they have, lives and other things to do. And they may be less interested in some of those very, very nitty gritty details. And then hopefully y'all will take notes, and then we'll hear sort of answers from the applicants and their experts, and potentially staff, city staff and their experts. And then I may have additional questions. So again, can't tell quite yet how many folks that have joined are interested members of the public versus members of your team or staff, but we'll get to that point in the hearing. But again, the order traditionally will be we hear from the public, we hear from city staff, the applicant team, then the public, and then we'll come full circle with the applicant team and city staff after we've heard from the public. We ask that members of the public keep yourself muted if you could, or if not, we will mute you as needed. But we're just trying to avoid any kind of strange audio or crosstalk, etc. I promise if we were all in the same room together, I would give you a very scary look or use a scary voice if you were trying to talk over someone else. We're not in a formal setting, as it were, or not court, but it's a semi-formal setting, and we try to adhere to a high level of civility, I think even more so than we see in court. So I'm confident all those participating can treat each other well and with respect, and I expect that of everyone involved. So I think with that, we can get started. I am getting quite a bit of kind of air feedback. Is anyone else having that problem, or is it just me? Let me just see.
I don't really hear that.
Okay, sorry. And every now and again, it can be user error on my end, and by every now and again, it would not be totally uncommon. I just want to make sure I don't cause problems. All right, but you all can hear me okay? All right, whatever the problem might be, I will ignore it. As long as you can hear me, I can certainly hear you, and there's kind of it sounds like I'm in an airplane, and that's okay. But with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and I will get Emily Adams sworn in on behalf of city staff. So do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And if you could just state and then spell your name clearly for the audio recording and explain your role here at the city.
Yes, Emily Adams, EMILYADAMS, and I am an associate planner for the city of Issaquah and the lead planner on this project.
Okay, thank you so much. And I note for folks participating, I will ask everyone to clearly state and spell your name. I don't need addresses, but the idea being for the audio recording, ensure that when a decision is produced, it's clear to the world at large that every effort was made not to butcher people's names in the spelling. So with that, Emily Adams, please proceed. And was my breakdown of the exhibits somewhat accurate? I know some things were provided yesterday, and I did review them, but numbering wise, in your mind, where should
Yes.
we be at this point?
With the amended staff report in the presentation, we should be at 32
32. Okay,
with
so
everything I sent. And I have a slide in my presentation to go over the ones that I sent just to make it, the ones I sent yesterday, just to make it abundantly clear what is being added to the record.
sure. Okay, so essentially, originally it was 30, the original PDF, and then there was a revised staff report, a staff presentation, although, well, I guess that was it. Is that right?
Yes, the 28 through 30 I had in the staff report originally to be provided at the hearing, so I sent you 5 more, but it only adds up to 32.
Got it. So 31, I guess, will be the presentation, and 32 will be the, we'll call it the 32A staff report, 32B revised staff report, or something to that effect,
Sure.
or
Yes.
just replace the earlier staff report. I'm fine with that. 32 is the
Okay.
staff.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
with that, 32 is the number. The number is 32. I will let you talk now. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I will share my screen for my presentation. All right. Can everybody see the screen? Or is it the
Yeah.
wrong one? Is it the wrong one, Sherry?
No, it seems okay. It hasn't launched yet, meaning that it's in. We can see the slide in the next slide, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. That's not the one I want to share. Let's do this slide.
There we go. I think
Great.
you nailed it.
Thank you. All right, so as we all know, Parkland Heights preliminary plat final hearing. Purpose of the public hearing per our code is to facilitate the review and discussion of the proposed project by staff, applicant, hearing examiner, and to solicit public comment relevant to this proposal. So as we have heard, just some context of the site. It is in North Issaquah, actually right along the city of Issaquah boundaries. It's zoned single-family small lot with the land use of low-density residential, 5.34 acres, and it is currently used by single-family home. There's a tennis court, an outbuilding, and a farm pond on site in critical areas along the eastern and northern side. Just briefly touching on the project information, because the staff report really dives deep. It is the proposal to subdivide into 23 single-family residential lots. It will have a new privately owned internal road, that is this Drive A labeled here, with access tracks to get to the various lots within the subdivision. There is a separate pedestrian access. You can see this along lots 23 through 20 to provide non-motorized access that is separate for pedestrians from that main vehicular entrance into the neighborhood. Frontage improvements along Issaquah Pine Lake Road are proposed, as well as the typical utilities of water, sewer, and storm. There is open space and tree preservation tracts. Those tree preservation tracts allow the proposal to meet all of our tree retention requirements. And there's also a play equipment proposed to be installed in track 995, which is over here to serve the neighborhood. And then of note about the critical area steep slopes on site is that the ones along 48th Street have been placed within an open space tract, and those along Issaquah Pine Lake Road have been determined to be exempt from steep slope regulations. The farm pond on site was evaluated by the applicant's wetland biologist and then by the city's third-party biologist and determined to not be a wetland and therefore not regulated under our critical area code. Public notification for this project was done in compliance with the Issaquah Municipal Code. There was an initial neighborhood meeting, which happens essentially at the pre-application stage of a project to get initial feedback, which comments were received for that. Those are all addressed in the staff report. And then notice of application was issued. One public comment was received, which was a repeat of the neighborhood meeting comment. And I spoke with the commenter, and those again are addressed in the staff report. The SEPA determination was issued on January 10th with a 14-day comment period. No comments or appeals were received for the DNS. And then the notice of hearing was issued on May 26th, and that was published on site, mailed to neighbors, published in the Seattle Times, and put on the city's website. Written comments were due yesterday at 5 p.m., though we would accept some if they came in today, but no comments have been received. So looking at the review, this is considered a modified level 4 review. So it requires public notice, a public hearing, and then a hearing examiner decision. It has been reviewed by all applicable city departments, which include Spire, Building, Parks, Engineering, Public Works Engineering, and Public Works Operational. And we also had it reviewed by external partners, including Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer District, Watershed, which is they reviewed for the critical area wetland in regards to if the farm pond was considered a wetland. And then Golder is the city's third-party peer reviewer who reviews the geotech. We went through 5 rounds of review, and on the 5th round, all city departments and external partners signed off on the proposal that it was ready to move forward for hearing and decision. The code used is the Issaquah Municipal Code, which encompasses all the standards that we're looking at: subdivision, environmental, development and design, street standards, stormwater manual. And then we also consider RCW 5817-110, which is a Washington State subdivision law. Per our code, this is a hearing examiner decision following the public hearing, using the applicable approval criteria and all of the standards within the Issaquah Municipal Code, which are all addressed in the staff report that I just talked about. And the decision would be either approval with conditions, or denial. As we spoke about, and just to make clear, all these documents are the ones that are submitted for record at this hearing. They were emailed to the hearing examiner as well as the applicant prior to the hearing, just to have a heads up of what those are, but that brings the exhibits up to 32. And I just wanted to touch on why the staff report was amended to make it abundantly clear what is being amended. Just a couple typos, which were me using west instead of east. So a couple instances throughout the staff report that I say there's steep slopes along the western property line, but they're actually along the eastern and the northern property line. The illumination section was revised. It originally said there was lighting planned along Drive A and 236, but the lighting plan submitted actually only showed lighting proposed along 236. And that lighting will be specifically reviewed at time of construction permits. And if any additional lighting is added, it will be reviewed at that time. The last paragraph of the stormwater section of the staff report was removed because that whole paragraph was associated with condition number 1. Condition number 1 was mistakenly added to this plat, and it is actually for a different project. So it was a holdover. So condition number 1 has been completely removed by staff. And then condition number 8 has been revised. The intent of the condition itself holds. All that is added is the code in which allows these mitigation and impact fees to be, I guess, levied against the project. So it's just added for clarity further down the line when they're being implemented of where they come from. With that, staff has recommended approval of the preliminary plat with 7 conditions. Again, condition number 1 has been removed. 2 through 7 remain the same that were in the staff report and deal with things like signage and tree monitoring and retention and applying for site work permits and such prior to final plat. And then the revised condition number 8, same intent, just expanded on it to make it clear in the future when those fees are levied at building permit where they're coming from. Okay, I will exit out of sharing my screen so I can see in case there's any questions.
Sure. And actually, before you exit, I wasn't quick enough. If you can bring up maybe the first kind of overhead, just to get a sense, either the aerial or the site plan.
Sure.
Right at the outset, you had talked about being, at the edge of the city. Can you just clarify, is it Sammamish or
Sure.
what is the edge that we're involved in here?
Yes, so Issaquah Pine Lake Road and Southeast 48th Street are city boundaries, and it is city of Sammamish that we are adjacent to.
Okay, so if we go over that Issaquah Lake Road, is that the edge?
This is, yeah, so this is the edge right here. If you can see this white dotted line, that's representing the city boundary. So where my mouse is, that's the city boundary.
The corner.
We're at the corner, correct? Yes.
Got
yes.
Got it. Okay. So, and yeah, now I'm looking, very clearly. Okay. So we're at the very corner there. Now I'm well oriented. So I'm familiar with the area. I just wanted to make sure but now I'm very familiar. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. That said, I do have a few more technical questions. And again, I stress that ultimately the burden is not on city staff. The burden would be on the applicant team to convince the hearing examiner that approval would be appropriate. But so feel free to, punt anything if you don't happen to know the answer. But sort of on the unique side, this issue of steep slopes aren't steep slopes if they were previously part of a road. I was just trying to wrap my mind around it. Maybe can you just walk me through a tiny bit about that issue or
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So it is in our critical areas code, we have a provision for steep slopes that if it was part of previous grading, and it's being regraded for this project, that it isn't considered a steep slope. So it's a provision right in our code that is being utilized, and the onerous was on the applicant to prove that these steep slopes were part of previous grading for the road. So a supplemental geotechnical memo was provided to provide evidence that it was part of the grading. And I will I will answer questions, but our engineer, Sam Landsman, just want to say he's also here. So if it gets a little too engineering for me, I'm going to throw it to him to answer any more in-depth questions.
Sure. And you know what, Sam, maybe I'll swear Sam in at the moment, as much as I dislike the t-shirt he's wearing. Sam Landsman, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
Thank you. And you're a little quiet. Can you guys all hear Sam Landsman?
Hello. Hello.
There, now I can hear you.
There's a leaf blower and such outside my window.
Okay, and can you just state and spell your name for the audio and explain your role here at the city?
Yep. Sam Landsman, SAMLANDSMAN. And I'm engineer on the project and engineer with community planning and development at the city of Issaquah.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Landsman. So I guess where I was headed here, it wasn't so much nitty-gritty technical details, but basically steep slopes are kind of a multifaceted critical area, or they're hard to define sometimes, because sometimes they're treated as an environmental facet that needs to be protected because it provides, a certain type of habitat and water, courseway, etc. Other times it's something that we look at as an engineering standpoint to make sure there's buffers so that, safety is of the public, and folks that live nearby and folks that travel in the area are protected. My sense of this provision related to the roads is it's on the engineering side, but can you just quickly speak to kind of what this all means from an engineering standpoint?
Yeah. So, sorry if there's background noise. If there's, so what the provision is getting at, if we have a steep slope that's been graded previously, that means pretty much the steep slope is no longer an environmental steep slope in the sense that it has been human made and graded by humans so that, you know, with stability in mind. As opposed to if it were just a natural slope, it it's subject to however it was formed thousands and more years ago. So, and also it's no longer like a natural feature if it's a previously graded slope, because to take care of that, they had to remove the plants there and essentially dig up a bunch of dirt so that they could get it to the slope that they want. And it's a fully engineered item. So it's no longer a natural slope because they had to remove the slope to get it to how they wanted to. And that was during a previous project that was previously approved. And, you know, you can't just randomly do it. Like you had to calculate, okay, how tall do I want the slope to be? What do I want the actual slope to be?
Sure.
And so it's a steep slope in the sense of, okay, maybe it's greater than 40%, but it's not, it wasn't like that as a natural feature.
Okay, you touched on both things. And so I think my understanding would be that, and maybe I've misunderstood a minor detail, but I guess one thought is, you know, if this is, if you can see my paper here, if this was the natural hill, right, and then it got cut into for a city project, and now it's, you know, no longer that sort of natural feature years ago, what the first thought is, you know, there was engineering that occurred, all those factors of safety, you know, they probably denuded it, they probably reinforced it with, you know, concrete, stone, whatever they needed, piles, such that if you build nearby, adjacent, etc., you don't have to think of it as that critical area kind of, you know, habitat, right?
No,
But
it's no longer a critical area. It's no longer a habitat because they got rid of that when it's basically just, it's a bunch of dirt that they've sloped and compacted so that it stays put.
All that said, though, I guess the other side of it, I just want to make sure I understand, is that if I'm developing, you know, adjacent or nearby, let's say, especially if I was above, right, you know, and the slope is here and the road is here, if I'm putting in a bunch of stuff up here, am I correct in thinking a geotech of some kind is necessary to ensure that development won't have detrimental impacts on the safety, not the environment, but the physical, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? The stability or you know, soundness of the slope itself. Am I correct in thinking someone's reviewed that one way or the other?
Yeah, that's a critical part of the geotech investigation.
Okay.
Is for site stability, and, you know, if given the existing conditions, if you build the houses or whatever it is on the site, will it be stable when the building is done? And they do a bunch of math and such to verify that, and we review it, and it's taken care of.
You check the math, but you don't necessarily need to check whether it impacts, you know, area gophers or birds, or right. I mean, it's no longer an environmental function. It's a purely an engineering function. Is that kind of maybe one way to think about it?
Yeah, when it's an engineered slope, it's more of an engineering exercise. If it's a natural steep slope, then there's a question of the stability. And then there's also the question of the habitat and such that might exist there. But usually if we were to get that evaluated, then we would have, you know, like a biologist or a wetlands reviewer. It would be more, it would usually be split out. The geotechs focus on dirt stability, and then the wetlands biologists and such focus on the critters that are living in the dirt.
Well, so I guess the segue, and if you're not the right person, Mr. Lensman, that's great. But, you know, I guess what I was thinking was the next thing that's kind of interesting about this property is that there's a man-made pond, apparently a pre-existing feature that was an engineered feature that, you know, to the outside observer may have looked like a pond or a wetland over the years, but but in fact was not natural. Are you someone that has expertise on that, Mr. Landsman, or not? Because it seems like a similar type of analysis.
That would be more planning. If it's questioning, if it's a critical area, that's jumping over to planning. I mean, we work so closely, but so that came up as a citizen question about if it was a wetland and critical area. And also the city, anytime there's a pond on site, even if it looks man-made to the naked eye and we can guess it's not a wetland, we're getting it evaluated. So we required a critical area report from the applicant. They send a wetland biologist out there to assess it. They submitted their report. And then I handle sending that to our third-party reviewer. And they also went out to site, did their own analysis of it, and they concurred with the applicant that it was not a wetland, did not have any of the features to categorize it as a wetland. So it is not regulated as a critical area.
That summed it up. So the analysis seems somewhat similar to the extent that, these man-made features, non-natural features, even if they've existed for some time, the way development is thought of is you have to kind of think about the original state of things, as it were, which is how stormwater gets analyzed, which I'm not going to get into at the moment, but
sure.
But
and if to speak to one of your questions, you kind of asked if, for instance, this is not the case on this site, but if when we're doing SEPA or looking at the site, there was an endangered species living on the steep slopes, then that would change things, but that was not the case in this instance.
Thank you for good point. If there's a spotted owl living in the tree on the slope, it changes everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's a pretty unique instance. But thank you for clarifying. But in terms of just what we generally think of as critical areas, engineered slopes that are steep in nature and engineered stormwater features, ponds, etc., are not considered, not treated as protected critical areas. Is basic concept. Yeah.
Correct. Not in this instance. Not to say that there hasn't been engineered storm drainage areas that have become wetlands. So I don't want to give you a blanket no, but in this instance, yes.
There you go. And I thank you for clarifying that as well. And the Army Corps and Department of Ecology don't have a permanent answer on that. But I guess one way to think about it is under the current municipal code and under, the current view of things, both on the federal and state level, the answer you've provided is the one that seems to be accepted.
Yes.
I'm okay with that. And so we will get to folks later, I do promise, but for the moment, we'll charge through. I don't have a ton more questions, but thank you. Just pointing out for the folks with hands raised. That said, I just wanted to get through, and I think that's all I had for Mr. Landsman. If we want to get that terrible Lakers T-shirt off screen, but I appreciate. I'm Sacramento King fan growing up, so. That said, there was I hate to, especially in the city of Issaquah, ask about vesting, but there was kind of a indication a couple ways. One was that currently, the hearing examiner does the preliminary plat hearing and produces a final decision. Rarely, in some places, I produce a recommendation of the council on a preliminary plat. That's become highly rare. But then in the city of Issaquah, I believe still at the moment, in most instances, the hearing examiner gets involved again later and does a sort of final review of the final plat and sort of checks his own math against what happened. And there's a meeting. It's not technically a hearing. State law changed years and years ago, not requiring that, but Issaquah still requires it. But my sense of the staff report was something to the effect of that might be changing in the city of Issaquah. Is the idea that because that's sort of a procedural thing, there isn't a vesting problem and I wouldn't have to worry about it, or which I'm okay with the answer.
Yes, correct. So essentially, during this project, actually effective June 1st, our Title 18 code was updated. So the preliminary plat was vested to the old code, but the new final plat will be the final plat will be a new application. So it will not be vested to what the preliminary plat was procedurally done under. The final plat will procedurally be done under the new code, and the final plat will be an administrative decision.
I think you said it fairly well. I don't want to, again, of all places, Issaquah is the last place I want to get into too much detail. For those that might know my history in the city of Issaquah, investing in Issaquah and myself have a long history. But the basic concept is, in the state of Washington, for those that might be watching, members of the public, we're a minority to the extent that there are certain types of projects when you submit your materials and the jurisdiction says your application's complete, you kind of lock a lot of things in, and preliminary plats have long been one of those things, but certain things never vest, and the procedures that exist don't vest, and so don't need to get into too much detail. I just want to make sure I understood what was happening, so I'll leave it at that. So that was that question, and again, thank you for the explanation. All right, we've talked about that already. Actually, we talked about steep slopes. You clarified many things. Just to be clear, the stormwater manual we're under, is it the city's 2022 at this point?
It is the 2019 Western Washington with the 2022 cities addendum.
There you go. So the newest, I think,
Yes.
newest DOE, and then the update, the addendum. So that's great. And then you already clarified those things, and then okay, final check here, and I think, in fact, those were the specific questions I had at the moment for city staff. So unless you had others you intended on calling upon, I think we can turn to our applicant to provide additional information.
I do not, so I will turn it over to the applicant. Thank you.
Okay, John Meem, I'll get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And I should have asked, are you an attorney or not?
I am not. I am a project manager with D.R. Horton.
There you go. I asked because I was swearing you in to give testimony as opposed to arguing, and sometimes I swear at attorneys, but I don't swear them in. But you are sworn in. Can you spell and then state your name for the record, Mr. Beam?
Yeah, it's JONBEEM. It's John Beam. And again, I'm with D.R. Horton, and I'm a project manager managing this project.
Great. Thank you so much. So this would then be your opportunity to present additional information and clarification and thoughts, etc., for myself and members of the public.
Sounds good. So I have a quick presentation here. So I'll share the screen.
And would you like to make that an exhibit, Mr. Beam, or is it demonstrative?
We don't need to, but if you'd like, we can.
Well, let's see how good it is. We can decide at the end.
Sounds good. So as everybody's aware, this is the Parkland Heights project. It's a 23 lot subdivision located in Issaquah. I just wanted to point out our consultant team. So there's myself, I have Ray Lynn, also with D.R. Horton. We have Tom Abbott, engineer with LDC, Christina Weller, geotech with Riley Group, Joey and Edward with Kimberly Horn, our traffic consultants. We have Lewis with Acre Environmental, and we also have legal representation with Mary Joy. You can see the rest of our applicant team located here. This is taken from the preliminary plat. To give just more detail on the location of the plat, so we're located, as Emily and you reviewed earlier, located in North Issaquah. right on the Sammamish border, just kind of north of the Highlands. There's great access to I-90 and all the amenities around. We are located in the North Issaquah sub area, and we are located in the Issaquah School District. So here's kind of a quick site overview. As mentioned multiple times, this is 23 home plat located on 5.34 acres. We are dedicating a right-of-way to the city of Issaquah along Issaquah Pine Lake Road. The zoning is single-family small lot. The permitted use, our proposals within the permitted use, the zoning of SFSL. We are proposing single-family detached homes on lots that are all greater than 6,000 square feet. The proposed access is shown here as Drive A that connects to 236th Avenue Southeast. This will be a private roads with 22-foot pavement, 5-foot sidewalks and planters along Drive A. There's a pedestrian access, as Emily alluded to earlier, that connects to 236th. We would like to point out that we have contacted the Issaquah School District at least 3 times to inquire about safe walk conditions with our curb and gutters and our sidewalks. We believe we provide safe walk conditions, and we've reached out to the HOA, inquiring about the bus stop, and there is a bus stop located across the street. So we believe we provide adequate access and safe walk conditions for any future children that will live within this plat.
Mr. Beam, I assume, sorry to break in there, I assume that's because under our state law, our CW 5817-110 sub A, I think, A or B, I don't know, but there's a specific provision sometimes overlooked that got thrown in during the legislative process to say essentially ensure there's safe walking conditions for school students. That said, just to clarify the point there, you said that across the street there's a bus stop already. Do you mean like to the, I guess it'd be the west if I were to leave the cul-de-sac, if I crossed, sorry, is it 38th?
Yeah, it's on the south side of 236th Avenue.
236, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a pre-existing bus stop there. So the thought being, any of the youngins in the neighborhood could walk, on sidewalks and then, across the crosswalk as protected or not, however needed, to a bus stop. But you said you reached out 3 times to the school itself and didn't get word back. Is that correct?
That is correct, and the bus stop location was provided to us by an HOA representative. We looked on the website to find the bus stop locations, but were unable to do so. Reached out to the school district to confirm and have not received any response.
Sure, and sometimes they will request, a bump out or some feature, small minor feature in a plat. I guess in my mind, and please clarify your understanding in your mind, after this process, were I to approve the preliminary plat, haven't made up my mind, but were I to do so, and the district said, can you guys put a little bus stop bump out in front of lot 22 or something, in your mind, would that be a minor enough modification that we wouldn't need to come back through a public hearing?
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay. Me too. So I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page, and if our planner remembers or can vigorously nod the head one way or the other as to agreement, the intent is minor modifications are allowed without redoing the process if things are moving forward. So thank you.
Yes, I agree with that from staff, that they're meeting safe route to school, and if a modification has to happen, it would be minor, no hearing.
There you go, minor modification. Excellent. And then just to be clear, in terms of the steep slopes, it'd be the north corner there. even a non-expert can kind of see the topo lines. That street was the one that was already carved, correct? The two, actually, in fact, both streets, the whole corner was already carved, right? You guys are just adding the
Yes,
little...
that is correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Excellent. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Please continue, Mr. Beam.
Yeah, just continuing along. So we have shared access tracks adjacent that connect to our interior drive A to provide access. We have track 997 that will provide access to lots 13 and 14. Track 998 will provide access through 3 and 5, and track 996 will provide access through lots 17 and 19. We are proposing a storm detention vault located here on track 998. On top of this vault, we do plan on providing amenities with open space, toy structure, picnic tables, and other amenities for the future residents to enjoy. Up here on this track, we have the tree tracks. We're retaining all of the trees located here to meet the tree retention requirement.
And sorry, further, just a couple clarification there. Not every jurisdiction has a tree code or tree retention requirement, but essentially here in the city of Issaquah, when you develop on a plot of land or a certain amount of land, you got to try to ensure a certain percentage, et cetera. And that tract in particular is where the applicant said, we can get we did the math, and in fact, there's a tree report for those that would like to see it. And they've checked, and the idea being, while there may also be replacement trees in particular places throughout, the Plat, there's also sort of natural feature of open space with retained trees of a certain, DBH diameter, breast height that has been set aside. Is that kind of an accurate way of explaining it?
That is.
And then in terms of stormwater, you said, sorry, it's almost a little too small, at least for me to see that tract there. Just to be clear, the way that the property slopes, the stormwater is being collected at the bottom of the slope, not at the top. Is that an accurate way of thinking of it?
Yes.
Okay. Because sometimes if you try it the other way, it doesn't always work because of that whole gravity issue. So the idea being, we've got that non-critical area steep slope, man-made, just to the north, and water will, again, because of gravity, likely when it rains, flow down and naturally go to that tract, but then also stormwater within the Plat itself, generally speaking, is being sort of gathered and diverted in that direction, correct?
That is correct.
And is it being infiltrated on site or not, just to the extent that y'all are using the newest manual and infiltration is often the goal, not always possible, especially in certain parts of the areas if they're too damp, but what's the ultimate, where's the water go after it goes to the vault?
Yeah, I can defer to our civil consultant, Tom Abbott with LDC, if you want to get into a little more detail, but my understanding is that infiltration will not be utilized on this site.
Sure. I can ask him at the end if I remember. But essentially, then the water is collected and then gets diverted into the existing municipal system. Is that right?
That is correct.
And treated, obviously, before that, but not obviously, but that is part of the requirement. So, sorry to interrupt. But if I remember, Mr. Abbott, we can come back to it. I don't want to bore members of the public with that level of detail if unneeded. So, Mr. Bean, please continue, and thank you for humoring my interruption.
Yeah, other things to note is we will be building retaining walls along Issaquah Pine Lake, and I'm just trying to think of other things to mention, we will be providing a stop sign located at the entrance of our plat. And that about sums up my presentation here. We're available to answer any other questions or comments that arrive along myself and my consultant team. We agree with the amended staff report and the revised conditions that staff has submitted into the record, and we request approval of this preliminary plat from the hearing examiner.
Great, thank you, Mr. Beam. That very last, one of the last things you said was the stop sign, because this comes up sometimes in terms of concerns over safety, and we already talked about safe walking routes. Can you try to kind of tell me where is the stop sign? What does that do to the road? Which road is it?
Yeah, I might have to defer to
yeah.
Tom, but I believe it is on this left side on the corner of lot 1. And Tom, please correct me if that is mistaken.
I'll get Tom sworn in then in a sec, and he can answer those two LID and stop sign questions real quick. But as you stated, the applicant has reviewed the materials, reviewed the recommended revised conditions from staff, concurs with sort of the breakdown of exhibits. We can make this number 33. You know what? Why don't we make it 31B? Well, because I'll get confused with the staff report otherwise. 31A will be city staff presentation. I'll make 31B applicant presentation. How's that?
Sounds good. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. That's okay with you, Mr. Examiner?
That is fine. Thank you. And obviously the kind of back and forth between Planner Adams and I about vesting and kind of the nitty gritty, no concerns that you were aware of, kind of tracked with your understanding of things.
That's correct.
Excellent. Okay. With that, then, why don't we go to Tom Abbott here quickly, and then after a couple questions, then we'll open it up to the public. So, Mr. Abbott, thank you for being here. I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
Can y'all hear that? And your video went pause.
Is I too quiet? Can you hear me?
Mr. Abbott, you're a sharper looking gentleman than me and Mr. Beam, but you might want to turn your video off while we do this, just for bandwidth if we need to. But let's make sure we can still hear you. Can you hear us, and can we hear you?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Much better. So, Mr. Abbott, can you just state and spell your name and explain who you are?
Yeah. So Tom Abbott, TOM ABBOTT, and I'm with LDC, and I'm a civil engineer and consultant for the applicant.
Great. So Tom Abbott, and it was ABBOTT, right?
2 B's, 2 T's, correct.
2 B's and 2 T's from LDC, Abbott, ABBOTT, LDC, and a civil engineer. And so the questions I had for you specifically, one had to do with this idea in stormwater management under the newest version of the DOE manual and the updates, and how people think about stormwater. The idea being the goal is to sort of keep all the water that rains down and where it would rain down kind of in place or as naturally would occur, i.e. infiltration. And this is actually in the last several weeks a huge issue in terms of the Colorado River decision that came out, and I won't get into any of that, but idea being there's a hydrologic recharge, and groundwater and rain, it's a whole system. But point being, in this particular instance, infiltration was not feasible. Is that an accurate understanding?
That is correct. Yeah, that is very accurate. So the site soils were found to be very, I guess, from a layman's perspective, too hard to infiltrate. Till soils, kind of a characteristic of the soils you'll see are those steep slopes. And that kind of means that the soil is really dense, really hard. And so when you're looking at these LID feasibility and the implementation of it. If your soils are kind of that character, it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to truly infiltrate stormwater. And so we went down the list and found that none of the LID related to none of the LID implementation related to infiltration and or dispersion were feasible on this one. So we are doing a couple of things related to the topsoil that you put down. It's kind of a BMP that I won't reference here, but we are doing that because that's really the maximum extent feasible we can implement LID.
Sure, and I may have misspoken. I apologize. I didn't mean to imply that it's always the case that when it rains, the water stays on the property. I guess the concept in stormwater recently, in the last decade or two, the idea being you want to mimic natural conditions, and so when you have that hard kind of clay pan, right? The idea is that the water does not naturally trickle and infiltrate. It hits and goes where it's going to go, and that's why certain areas have deep valleys and running rivers, and this is one of those areas, kind of near the mountains where that soil is does not naturally infiltrate straight down. Is that kind of am I clarifying? Okay, I'm not trying to make things worse. I just want to make sure I didn't misspeak on the record.
No, that's absolutely right from a technical perspective, for sure. Yeah, and that's why we have the detention system to, like you said, mimic the prehistoric forested runoff from the site. And so we've done our due diligence to do the design and to create that and provide the calcs. So, yep, it's exactly what we've done.
Okay, great. But the only other thing I'll say, in terms of the public that might be interested is, one must ensure at this point that any stormwater impacts would not have detrimental impacts or make any stormwater negative situations that might already exist worse through development. Is that kind of an accurate way of also augmenting what we're talking about?
Yep, that's exactly correct.
Okay, so that was that, and then the other issue, let's see, it was LID, and then what was the other?
Stop sign.
The stop sign. And can we pull up maybe the site plan if that helps? I don't know.
Yeah, I'll share my screen real quick here. This is one of the sheets in the preliminary plan set.
Here we go.
So you see right here.
Proposed.
So just to orient ourselves, so you're looking north is this way, north-south. But here's the two stop signs. We're putting one on the, I guess, eastbound approach of Southeast 49th Street.
Are you able to flip that at all? Can you rotate the image? I hate to be the person that my brain will feel much better if north is up. I know that's not the way the universe actually is oriented, but if it's not easy, you don't worry about it.
I could do some real quick geometry, really quick here.
Oh, no, sorry. I didn't mean to make this hard. Never mind. I just didn't know if you were able to just.
There you go.
Oh, wow. Wow, okay.
There you go.
All right. But essentially, by north is up, I guess what I was thinking was the city boundary for Sammamish, the corner we've been talking about would be, well, now I don't know how to explain it. There we go. If you can just kind of, yeah, okay, I think I get it. All right, so the stop sign, as we're orienting, is it a four-way, a single? If you can just kind of clarify that point, Mr. Abbott.
For sure. Yeah, so traffic coming this way would stop obviously at the stop sign. Same thing for this approach here. And there were previously no stop signs at either, well, obviously not to our entrance, but there was no stop sign at this location for this existing street. But traffic does not stop this way, and we're not proposing any kind of stop controls, stop sign, signal, nothing like that.
So essentially, 49th, what the to the west, I suppose, the pre-existing neighborhood to the west, adding a stop sign or proposing that a stop sign be added there, and then in front of this proposed plat at Drive A and whatever clever name it ends up being called, something like, you know, Issaquah, you know, road or something, would have a stop sign. Idea being, if I'm exiting either neighborhood, you know, I have to stop. I can't just. But in terms of, say, kids walking to school, right? If they need to cross the street, one assumes then we would have probably a crossing guard or something.
Correct. Yep.
Meaning there isn't a feature. It's not a four-way stop, and there isn't a, you know, some newfangled technology exists, right, where you can hit a button and it lights up. It's not normally a stop. That kind of. I mean, what's proposed here is a stop sign on your property at the edge there from Drive A, so that if I was leaving the cul-de-sac and I wanted to, you know, exit, turn right or left, I would stop and, you know, wait for traffic. Or if I was across the street in the neighborhood to the west, headed to the east, to turn north or south, I would stop. Am I thinking about that right?
Correct. Yeah. Yep. You'd stop coming into this intersection from the adjacent development and then coming from our development. However, the north-south traffic in 236th does not have any stop control.
Sure. And that's a local street. Do you happen to know the speed there on 236?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't know.
Sure. Okay, I was just curious. I you know,
It is local street. Yeah.
it's local. I sometimes, you know, I was, maybe Emily Adams or someone on the city staff can speak to this here shortly, but you know, often you'll see instances where at least some white stripes are put at the corner, so it's not an active required stop, but it kind of triggers to the driver that, hey, there might be kids, or, you know, that might be the kind of thing, you know. So I just was curious but doesn't appear we've gone that far through in terms of that thought process. Is that right?
I would say from a staff perspective, it's possible, but that would be more determined during the site work permit. Those exact specifications would come out during construction permit.
Sure. Okay. This was Emily Adams that
Correct.
in there on behalf of staff, saying that essentially that level of review, and again, we still haven't heard from the school district. They might have an idea or not, but the idea being that when the more nitty gritty, you know, thought process were to occur, that would be when that level of detail. The hearing examiner, I'm not one generally to review stripes on a road. I didn't mean that I intended on going into that level of detail. I was just trying to understand, you know, the traffic calming and safety for kids, etc. That said, Emily Adams, do you happen to know what the speed limit on 236 would be in that area?
All the streets, local streets, have a base of 25 miles per hour. I am looking on Google Images and not seeing it, but I would assume 25. That's what those streets are based with.
There you go. All right. So folks drive 50 if they can get away with it. So, you know, we got to be careful if kids are crossing the street. But that might be why one of the hands is raised. We will not get into detail. But the concept, though, is there are stop signs proposed, including one on property not owned by the applicant. Correct, John Beam?
That is correct. And we just would like to say that, you know, during the civil review process, we're happy to comply with any crosswalk or safe walk conditions that are going to be required.
If needed, you guys will paint stripes, later maintained by the county, one would imagine, or as opposed to an HOA, because, you know, not a private right of way, but you all would be willing to do what is needed at the outset, is what
that is correct.
Understood. Thank you. I think Tom Abbott answered the specific questions I had for him. And I believe you already noted no concerns over the conditions in the revised staff report. And so at this point, I don't have any more technical questions or other questions for the applicant at this stage. And so unless you wanted to call on anyone else, Mr. Beam, or even if you did, I might suggest we see if there are members of the public that want to participate, and then we can come back around as needed. So
I would agree with that. Yeah.
okay, so with that, Zoom, I have love for. Teams, I have no control. I don't understand how it works. Apparently, there's a hand of many that might be raised. I can't tell. Candy Bear, are you able to help? And
Yes, you have two public comments that came in as chats because they had to leave the meeting earlier. If you'd like me to read them into the record, I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, you've got a wonderful reading voice. If you can read them in, we'll get them in the record.
Okay, unless Magdalena is still available. Magdalena?
Yes, hello.
Oh.
Hi, this is Magdalena Bragun.
I will swear you in. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And if you could just state and spell your name for the audio.
My name is Magdalena Bragun. It spells Magdalena, last name Bragun.
Thank you for being here.
And I am here in a dual capacity, one as a homeowner, directly across the street from the future development, and also as vice president of the Homeowners Association for Aspen Glen, which is the neighborhood directly across the street from the future construction.
And the direction is that would be west?
Correct. We are directly to the west.
Still in Issaquah, not in Sammamish. That's what I'm trying to make sure I understand.
Yes, and just I do have to leave. I apologize. I did leave the comment there. I should already be on my way, but and I will actually let perhaps Emily or somebody else read that for the record and hopefully address it. The bottom line is that just recently, just very in the last couple of days, something happened across the street that you may not know about. The owner of the property that I listed there in the chat has cleared their wetland, which is against the law. The city of Issaquah has reacted to it, but by the time they did come in and put in a stop work order sign, it was already all cleared. So the animals have been displaced already. There will be separate consequences to that property owner, but the bottom line is that we have now this displacement problem. And while our homeowners association is not objecting to the wetland determination or the critical area determination, we are hoping that maybe there are some ways that you can help with this problem, because we now know that it has been aggravated. There was a wetland right next to what will be Parkland Heights, but it was now cleared. We had a problem with that, with a property next door to the one that has now cleared it a couple of years ago. So we're getting to a point where even though the wetlands are designated in the stripe next to Parkland Heights, the animals are getting displaced, and we are somewhat worried about the large mammals, the small mammals, and the birds.
And I know you got to go. Just to clarify one point, the wetland you're talking about, are you saying there's a wetland on this property, meaning you don't agree with the reports, or you're saying there's an adjacent property either to the, I guess, north, south? Can you just clarify the location for me?
Let me clarify. The address that I mentioned in my chat is probably going to make it very clear on the record, but we are talking about a previously designated wetland that's not part of the Parkland, the future Parkland Heights location. The McLean property it is immediately west. The wetland that I'm talking about, the one that was cleared out, is immediately west, across the street from the future Parkland Heights. Our neighborhood is also an owner of a wetland directly across the street from the future Parkland Heights neighborhood. So there were designated a number of wetlands from what used to be a larger property owned by Mr. McLean. He sold it about 25 years ago to a developer of our neighborhoods. And at that point, the wetlands were designated into the Plat. But what I'm saying is that just recently, within the last few days, there was a violation of the wetland designation across the street from you. So the animals from that wetland and the animals that are moving through that wetland area from south to the north. I know it may not tell you much, but there is essentially a corridor for the animals to pass through that has been disturbed. So
to help, is Issaquah Pine Lake Road? Are we talking on the? Would it be east of that or west of that still?
No. It's not east of the Pine. Issaquah Pine Lake Road is on the other side of the Parkland Heights property. We are talking west of the Parkland Heights property. So immediately next to Aspen Glen Homeowners Association and our neighborhood.
Okay, so there's definitely, I know, a designated wetland area to the south, but you're saying there's a different property, not the property under it here. Is okay.
I'm happy to point it out on the map. If
me for the loop here, I will look at the map. I promise.
It's essentially what I'm trying to say is that while our neighborhood wants to make it clear we are not objecting to the wetland designation, I do want to point out that the problem of the animals being displaced has just been aggravated by another party completely unrelated to this project. And because of that, if there are ways that the developer could support, and I'm not an expert in any of this, but if there are ways that this could be helped on some level, maybe by staggering the project in some way. I'm really not sure. You are the experts.
I think I get the point now very well. The idea being, A, there's some cumulative impacts of development that are now becoming more and more clear. B, it's not their fault, meaning this applicant, they aren't the bad guy in this case, but it's a new situation. And C, you're hoping there might be some mitigation, let's not use the word mitigation. There might be some voluntary things perhaps the developer could do to assist in helping the situation. And right. You're hoping that's the case. Is that right?
That's right, yes. And we were hoping for protection for the pond, but we understand that this determination has been made. But the bottom line is that there have been birds and large and small mammals living in that property for the past 25 years at least. That's as long as our neighborhood has been here. That's as long as this pond has been in existence. So even though it's a man-made pond, we will be facing some animal and bird displacement issues. So notwithstanding the determinations, if there are just some ways that could be helped, it would be greatly appreciated.
One other final thing I'm going to say, you're kind of organizer over there. If they're willing to kind of be like, hey, if you guys will help us do a thing, will you be the person that they can talk to? Meaning if your neighborhood comes and helps move the animals with us, would you be okay? Would you be into that? I'm not saying I'm requiring anything. I'm just trying to get good neighbors. Is that something you'd be interested 100%. In helping?
Of course, definitely.
You want to be looped in, and we'll make your chat part of the record as well, okay?
That sounds great. Thank you. One other point I wanted to make very quickly is that the issue you raised about the stripes, the white stripes on the road, you are correct. People do go 50 miles per hour right on 236th Avenue. You guesstimated that.
Would your neighborhood appreciate having those stripes put in?
My neighborhood would definitely appreciate having those stripes, yes.
And you all have a bus stop, correct, on your side?
My house, yes, correct. My house is directly at the bus stop location. And now with the neighborhood coming in, it would actually really help the kids to pass that intersection safely.
And you will yell at anyone in the morning or night going too quick, I assume, yeah, if you're around?
Well, I try not to, but they do go pretty quickly.
That's why I brought it up. And Mr. Beam said that the applicant is amenable to that kind of a thing. So the idea being, let's make sure the kids are safe. So Understood. Thank you so much.
Sounds great.
Comment.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Okay, and we might have one other commenter. Is that right, Emily Adams? Or Kenny Bear?
Would you like me to read her full statement into the record or no? Just send it to you via.
How long is that? I'd be happy to have Mr.
It'd probably take me like 3 minutes tops, 2 minutes.
You know, Ms. Beam, would you mind if we don't do that, and I'll give you an opportunity? We'll just leave the record open in one day, and if you want to respond, you can. I'll be honest. I think that'd be better. Is that?
I mean, I guess we'd prefer the record not to remain open at this time.
I'll just tell you, I am way behind in life. I don't intend this to take months and months, but it's not going to be 10 business days. It's probably going to be more like 12. So 2 extra days is what it is. I hate to be that pessimistic about it, but I'm currently trying to drop from 50 jurisdictions to, your firm probably knows better than anyone, to like 20, and I'm not there yet. I'm getting there, but I'm not there yet. So
that sounds good. Understood.
You know, I don't know what the remedy is yet if I'm late. Well, I've been waiting for years. But point being, we can read it in, but I just, you know, I'd prefer to maybe just have us all be able to read it. So
that sounds good.
All right, we'll make it an additional exhibit. 33 will be the comments. So with that, we have another person potentially, Kenny Bear.
At this moment, I do not have any other hands raised. Is there any other public members that would like to participate in discussion today? If you could raise your hand, or if you don't know how to, you can unmute your mic and make a statement.
Or for the phone call-ins, I think they might have to hit star or something. Star.
Yes.
Pretty quiet. Okay, so by the way, John Meme, I can't see the names. Most of these folks seem to be connected to your team or city staff. When I hopped on and there were this many participants, I was a little surprised, given that we didn't have a ton of public participation in advance of today.
I would say about 6 or 7 of these would be part of our consultant team.
Okay.
And the remaining city staff and neighbors or public.
Oh, just, you know, my fan club, I suppose.
And Mr. Examiner, would it be beneficial at this time to have Lewis of Acre Environmental speak to some of the concerns of the public comment?
I'm happy to hear it. Yeah, I think I got clarification to the extent that when Ms. Bregan first started speaking, I was worried we were having a kind of a dispute over, you know, ideas about what that pond on site was, but she ultimately clarified for me that was not what she was speaking to. So I would love to hear from him, but it doesn't, her actual concerns seem to be more of a global kind of, they recognize the thing that happened is not on the property in question here. It's a different property, but it does exacerbate the bigger picture. And so my kind of novel idea was, you know, these are challenging things, right? When you have wildlife corridors, and I would be happy to hear from your consultant, but I guess what I was trying to say was, you know, it takes a village. You know, it'd be hard for me to find a nexus or something that would require you all to fix a problem some other property owner was involved with. But what I really got the sense by the end of Ms. Bragan's comments was, you know, she just wants to try to, you know, use this opportunity to have everybody help do what can be done, you know. So yeah, I'd be happy to hear from your consultant, but just to make sure we're on the same page. I don't need him to explain to me, you know, man-made pond, not a wetland. Are you agreeing with me on what we think she said?
I understand. Yeah, I agree with you. And we would like to state that we have been in communication with the HOA in Magdala, and we will be happy to work with that HOA with any issues that come up during all this process of getting this part built.
John, if staff could jump in with our perspective because I know
Sure,
what's
this is
happening.
Emily
Emily
with audio.
Adams, yes. Just because I know what's happening with that site, just staff, it doesn't really have bearing on this hearing because it's a separate issue that is in code enforcement right now.
I would not.
make,
I would prefer
yeah.
not to know too much. By the way.
Yeah. So that's all.
Because of-
That's all I was gonna say is like this. It's not. This is an issue staff is aware of, and it's being dealt with separately, and we don't view it as having bearing on this.
Well, neither did she ultimately. I think
Yes,
that's
yes.
the point. Yeah, right. I mean, John
Yes.
Beam, I'm sure knows. Emily Adams, I'm sure you know. Sometimes in these hearings, right? There are disputes between the public or even experts, right? Battles of the experts, and right when the conversation began, I went, "Oh, is this a fight over that pond?" Right? Pond meaning the stormwater thing. And ultimately she clarified, no, that's not what I'm saying. This is a problem on a different property neighboring. They're the bad guys. This property owner is not the bad guys. I just would love help or what. And it sounds like y'all are amenable to keeping her in the loop. And all I'm going to suggest, Mr. Beam, I'm not going to condition anything were I to approve this. Just please keep them in the loop, and anything your consultants can creatively think of, and I'll task Emily Adams to do the same, right? And if I'm free that day, I'll come join. Were this to be approved, anything we can do to try to, assist in that animal migration problem that we all know it exists, and but the point ultimately was what happened on that neighboring property. You all are not responsible for. She acknowledged it. I get it. I think that's what Emily Adams is saying. I think we're good.
Sounds good to us.
Excellent. Okay. So sorry that I got off track there in my head. So I was going to make her chat exhibit 33. Was there another chat? I hate the chat feature because I get off track and it's a PRA.
I emailed the exhibit 33 to you, to the applicant, Emily, and to Andrew.
Okay.
And I just copied and pasted in there. Right now, I'm creating a list of the people attending, and I'm going to send it to John Beam's group. If he could verify who are his staff members, then we might be able to understand who's probably the public that is remaining. But I do not have any further. I don't have any further chats came in or further comments come in.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So it was just the one chat. Sorry, John. Just the one chat, right? And then we got clarification. So we'll include that as part of the record. And then someone thought they might want to speak, but they may have left. But ultimately, just the one comment or one test. Just the one person that testified on behalf of the public is what I was trying to say. And so I think that'll make sense. And with that, I'll come back around to John Beam on behalf of the applicant to see what other thoughts they may have.
At this time, we don't have any other comments. I mean, if you'd like me to clarify at this time who is part of our consultant team that's in this meeting, I'm happy to do so.
Candy Bear, would that be helpful for you? I don't know if it'll be helpful for me ultimately. It almost would confuse me.
Ted, I mean, Andrew, it would only just depend if you need to identify that for your record or for your okay, then we do not need that.
If you stay on for a minute afterward, John, and let Candy know who was involved in terms of if they want to copy the decision or whatnot, that'd be great. But in terms of what I need to put in my decision, I will only have about 5 names at this point, and that'll be, Emily Adams, that'll be our Lakers fan, Sam, that'll be you, Tom Abbott, and our one member of the public. And then I didn't swear Candy Barron, but I will do so. It was all procedural. But Candy Bear, do you swear affirm everything you said was the truth today?
I do swear.
She's always truthful. I know that about her. So with that, getting 9 more names is only going to confuse me. Is kind of where I was headed with that. That said, I don't have anything further. My questions have been answered to the best of my knowledge, but I don't want to foreclose the idea, Mr. Beam, of not having you call on any of these experts that have taken the time to participate.
I think at this point we are good.
Y'all have a good attorney if they've convinced you just to be quiet when it seems like the right time. So well done. Emily Adams, anything further on behalf of city staff?
Nothing further from city staff.
Nothing further from staff. So, you know, I almost never do this with a preliminary plat, and I reserve the right to change my mind. But I will say, based on the review I've done already and the record, which, you know, is pretty substantive, 32 exhibits I think I reviewed in advance, and we just got the chat at 33. You know, I think this is the type of proposal I am comfortable with ultimately approving with the conditions that have been recommended. I, again, reserve the right to change my mind and or tweak the conditions. Ms. Beam, I was gonna definitely give you all the opportunity to respond or have your consultant respond, which I think would be helpful, honestly. Just, I don't need a full-on memo. I don't need hours of work here. I just like an email to our Emily Adams and Candy Bear from, you know, you or your consultant that just essentially kind of responds to the idea that was discussed with the neighboring property owner that testified, Magdalena. You know, I think just to have the record would be nice. And again, I don't intend on this record being open forever, but you know, an extra couple days would be helpful for me. So let's just say Thursday, if it can be produced tomorrow.
Okay, so Mr. Examiner, just to be clear, you're looking for an email from us that addresses the comments that were the public comments that were brought up.
I'm giving you the option. I'm not.
Okay.
But I will leave the record open for that one limited function.
We will provide that.
I don't want people to send in a bunch of other things. I'm just saying you, the applicant, got, just like me, a little bit kind of, you know, we had this chat thing come in that we didn't have an opportunity to fully think through. I just want to, I mean, I like where it's going. I like the idea of a collective kind of solution that is non-government mandated, but you know, I think I understood where it was. I understood it wasn't an actual concern with the pond, the stormwater pond, but you know, anything y'all want to add, you're welcome to add. But you know, I'm not asking for significant resources to be produced on this. Is just to be clear. So.
Sounds good. We will work
like a 2-paragraph maximum, if that helps.
Sounds good. We'll work with our environmental consultant and put something together for you.
Excellent. And I really, again, I'm not trying to foreshadow the idea this is going to take forever. In fact, the great thing about plats is they're a lot more straightforward than appeals and other things. But you know, I take this opportunity to point this out because I know that your particular organization and LDC and some of these other groups, you know, have the misfortune of being in front of me in lots of places, and things are improving, will improve. You know, hopefully this hearing examiner system will continue to exist. If I get rid of 30 of my contracts, someone will pick them up. So, but it'll give me an opportunity to be timely in what I do. So that's the hope. All that, yeah, I'm getting laughs from the attorneys involved. They know. So with that, I think I have everything I need. That said, just in case any members of the public are involved, Kenny, if folks want a copy of the decision or would like to see it, will it ultimately be on the city's website, or how can that occur?
Emily, if you can confirm that, on the isn't the decisions attached to the GIS?
Yes,
link?
it will be on our active projects list on our city website, which was what was linked in all the notices.
There you go. And just in case there's a member of the public involved and they aren't sure, can either you or someone on staff give an email, the public can email?
Anyone's welcome to email me, EMILYAD as in dog at issaquah.gov.
Okay. I think with that, we can conclude our hearing today. I thank everybody for taking the time. Thank you to the applicant team for having so many folks available. Thank you, Sanford City staff and members of the public that took the time to be a part of the process. We'll get a decision out, and I'll stay out for a sec after the recording just to catch up on a procedural matter if John can kick off his team, just Candy Bear and I, and maybe Emily, unrelated to this project. I just want to stress that.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Examiner.
Thank you very much. And we can